Hi, I'm Riana Pfefferkorn, and now the fake news. Our top story today, notorious ransomware operator Lockbit issued an apology just before the new year over a ransomware attack that one of its customers had committed against Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children. Lockbit said it had blocked the partner responsible for the attack from continuing to use Lockbit's services. Lockbit also offered the hospital a free decryptor tool to unlock its data, an unusual offer that kept both Lockbit and the now blocked partner from monetizing the attack. Reached for comment, the head of one major US hospital system condemned Lockbit, saying, "This just goes to show how socialized medicine harms the free market. If this had happened in America, those kids never would have gotten valuable healthcare IT services for free." The Ontario government likewise criticized Lockbit for breaking the law with its malicious software because the ransom message was displayed only in English and not also in French. Beyond that, a government spokesperson said, "We Canadians don't really mind organized crime because it's organized." Speaking of cybersecurity incidents, the Federal Trade Commission this week released new guidance for Americans on how to avoid being victimized by data breaches. Just stay off the internet. Enigma exclusive Securities and Exchange Commission Chair Gary Gensler, who's long advocated for stricter regulation of cryptocurrencies, told the Not Fake News Hour that the SEC will soon be launching a campaign of public service announcements modeled on the famous "This is your brain on drugs" PSAs from the 1980s and 90s. In the first of the new PSAs, a man holds up a roll of $100 bills and says, "This is your money." He then says, "This is your money on a crypto exchange," after which he shoves the money in his pocket and runs away. And now for the weather. A series of heavy rainstorms this month led to flooding in many parts of Northern California. Among the affected areas, the popular resort town of Guerneville. The federal government has confidently attributed the source of the flooding to the Russian River. An earlier mistaken attribution to the North Korean River has been chalked up to a false flag operation. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike announced that it considers the Russian River an APT, dubbing it Muddy Bear, which coincidentally is also the name of a gay bar in Guerneville. In DC news, last month, Congress passed an appropriations bill that included a landmark in the first ever mention in federal law of memory safety. The law encourages the Office of the National Cyber Director to investigate memory safety within the federal government. It's another sign of the US government's emphasis on cybersecurity under President Joe Biden. As for his thoughts on the topic, former President Donald Trump said he thought memory safety meant when your ethics lawyer coaches one of your aides to tell the January 6th committee, "I don't recall," in response to every question they ask her. If she can't remember, then I must be safe. In privacy news, the California Privacy Rights Act, or CPRA for short, took effect on January 1st. For those of you scrambling to get into compliance, you've got some breathing room. An obscure provision of the law delays civil and administrative enforcement until July 1st. Another little-known clause in the law, starting next year, every year on March 21st, the CPRA will be suspended for one day only. To learn more about this unusual clause, I sent my colleague Alex Stamos on assignment to the palatial Bay Area home of Alistair McTaggart, the wealthy real estate mogul who masterminded the CPRA and the CCPA before it. When Alex asked him to explain the CPRA's one-day suspension, McTaggart said, "I just wanted to make the purge a real thing." He then added, "just like the most dangerous game." When Alex asked what he meant by that, McTaggart said, quote, "I'll give you 5 minutes before I unleash the hounds." Good luck, Alex. You got this. I'm gonna miss that guy. In sports news, let's face it, there are too many cyber cooks in the federal government kitchen in terms of ownership of cyber issues. There are numerous high-ranking officials from multiple agencies that all have a cyber portfolio, which has prompted power struggles within the executive branch and confusion among the general public. Now, Congress has taken action to decisively consolidate federal cyber responsibility into one position once and for all. This year's National Defense Authorization Act requires all the various cyber czars to arm wrestle for it. So this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out slugfest, and I'm so excited that I made a bracket. All right, let's go over this. So we have Secretary Mayorkas of the DHS pitched against General Nakasone, who's the head of the NSA and of Cybercom. He's an Army guy. I think he gets that desk jockey easily. Same thing, paired up, Army woman, Easterly versus Neuberger on the National Security Council. Again, like, Jenny Easterly's in the Army. I didn't even realize that before heading up CISA. She's going to crush that girl. All right, now, down here we've got the head of the FBI, Chris Wray, up against Avril Haines, who's the director of national intelligence. Okay, to join the FBI, you gotta be able to run like an 8-minute mile. You gotta be pretty fit. Did you know Avril Haines studied judo in Japan? She moved to Japan to study judo. Haines is gonna get this one easily. Sorry there, Chris. By the way, Chris Inglis, Chris DeRusha, and Chris Wray, why are there as many guys named Chris in the federal cyber leadership as there are women? Come on, it's 2023, but I digress. If we pitch the federal CISO against the national cyber director, Chris Inglis has said he's gonna retire and step down sometime soon. He hasn't said when. So I'm gonna say this is gonna be a forfeit to DeRusha, which is good. I mean, look at his 4 eyes. He looks like me, for God's sake. Anyway, thank you, Internet Society, that's helpful. It's not my laptop. So then advancing, I think again, CISO is going to fall to Haines, and likewise, Easterly versus Nakasone, a little bit awkward since he's technically a higher rank than she is in the Army. Nevertheless, out of everybody on here, there are 7 people whose picture is in front of an American flag and only 1 who's posed in a t-shirt holding a Rubik's Cube. I'm going Easterly all the way to the final. Easterly in charge of everything cyber in the federal government. And see me afterwards about a betting pool. I'll put down $100 on her. All right, and that is sports. So if I could just get my own stuff turning. Okay, all right, here we go. Turning now to international news, it has been 11 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. The conflict has largely made Russia a pariah on the world stage, while Ukraine has emerged as a scrappy David that's largely held its own against a surprisingly inept Goliath. So, for analysis of the latest developments in the war, we turn now to our international correspondent. Joining us today via Zoom from Moscow, Edward Snowden is going to be here today. Hello. Hi there, Ed Snowden.
Hello, USENIX Enigma. Hello, Riana.
You're looking very authentic today. That's definitely the real you.
Thank you. I'm feeling just as great as I look.
Well, you must be, given that you were recently granted Russian citizenship. Isn't that right?
Da. Slava Rossi, Slava Putinu.
Okay, so does that mean that you're now eligible to be drafted and sent to fight in Ukraine?
Oh no, I'm too old for the draft. Besides, I have other skills that make me far more valuable to the Russian government than I'd be as a frontline fighter.
I bet you do. But tell me, Ed, how can your adoptive country be confident that you won't quit that job the same way that you quit your job working as a contractor for our government?
Oh, they can be very confident, Rihanna, because they know an important fact about me.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I have a severe plutonium allergy.
A severe allergy to plutonium. Well, that does sound like a very effective motivational tool. Thank you, Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden, everybody. All right. All right, well, it wouldn't be 2023 if we didn't abuse sophisticated AI for cheap kicks. So next up are some news items written by ChatGPT. The government just announced that it will be banning the use of all encryption. In other news, the government just announced that it will be banning the use of all locks. A new study found that the average person has over 200 online accounts but only uses 5 different passwords. In other news, the average person has also just made it exponentially easier for hackers to take over their entire digital life. Not wrong. The FCC just voted to repeal net neutrality regulations. On the bright side, at least now we'll all know exactly how much it'll cost to stream our favorite cat videos in high definition. Okay. The government is considering revoking Section 230, the law that protects social media companies from being held liable for their users' content. In other words, if you thought the Facebook algorithm was bad at censoring your posts before, just wait until it has to worry about getting sued for every single one. All right, well, some of those weren't half bad, but I think the incredibly lucrative career path of stand-up comedy is safe from having their jobs taken by the robots just yet. All right. And so, speaking of different breaches, LastPass, the computer password manager, was recently hacked. Controversially, the announcement of this hack initially came in August of last year, but the company waited until December 22nd to tell everybody that their entire password vaults had been stolen. So LastPass's 1-2 punch of breaching user trust with a major hack, then adding insult to injury with its botched communication strategy, brings us to a segment we call Really?
And now, it's time for Really with Riana Pfefferkorn.
Really, LastPass? Have you ever heard of the phrase, you only had one job? You had one job. Like the robot from Rick and Morty that passes butter has more jobs than you did. Really? taking all of September, October, November, and December to investigate before announcing that everybody's password vaults were stolen? Really? And then waiting to make that announcement until like 3 days before Christmas? Right before Christmas? Really? When Log4Shell ruined everybody's Christmas last year, did you look at that and say, hold my beer? Really? Really? And another thing, it turned out that you had a lot of accounts password iterations configured to 5,000? What year is this? Really? Look, this is America. This is America. We live by one rule. Bigger is better. It's true for hamburgers, it's true for cars, it's true for houses, it's true for the federal debt ceiling, and it is definitely true of password iterations in a goddamn password manager! Really? Really? Come on! And that's all we got. That's the way it is, folks. Good night.